For today's DC Multiverse review, we are looking at O.M.A.C. Before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. As you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of O.M.A.C. And for the source material, it is from Infinite Crisis. On the backside of the card, you do have a read-up for who the character is. They don't have a real name, and it reads, O.M.A.C. units became a threat after Batman constructed the artificially intelligent Brother Eye satellite to keep tabs on metahumans' behavior. Corruption by Maxwell Lord caused Brother Eye to infect more than 1 million human agents with a nanotech virus and initiate a sweeping campaign against metahumans. Batman destroyed his creation during the Infinite Crisis, but the O.M.A.C. project lived on in the form of its single surviving agent, Michael Cosner. And that's a pretty good read-up on what the O.M.A.Cs are. Let's move on to the accessories that are included with this figure, which is where it is lackluster, because for a character that is also meant to be army built, because maybe some of you did army build a few of these O.M.A.Cs, I wish he did came with a little bit more accessories, such as like weapon options. So for the single accessory that he does come with, it is of course a reuse of the same accessories that were included with Murder Machine. These are the tentacle cord wirings that come out of Murder Machine when he needs to hack into computers. And yes, that works for O.M.A.C. because O.M.A.C. is a robot that could probably do the same thing and have the same functions. But if you're going to army build this guy, it would be really cool if he had like other types of weapons. If he does use weapons, right? Like maybe, like a gun or something that's like very futuristic looking, a sword, some sort of melee weapon. It doesn't have to be exactly a sword. I'm just giving ideas because, if you have like a bunch of them with this sort of thing, it is scary, but at the same time, it's very plain as well. So, army building, you want to have variety with the accessories on those army built figures, right? You want them to have different stuff going on. And I think that's where Mcfarlane fumbled here by just only giving him this single accessory because it's easy for them to reuse, and they didn't bother to give him any more. Now, the sculpting of this accessory, which we have seen a long time ago, I don't remember if there was any other figure that reused the same accessory. Maybe there was, and I just forgot. It is nicely sculpted here, and I do like how the purple is all translucent this time. Yeah, the way that the purple is done here, I like the execution. So it's nice that it's in a different sort of plastic material, and the sculpt details are all visible, but they're just all purple. But again, it would have been perfect if there were just a few more accessories, and it would have made this guy even better. And that's basically all the accessories that he comes with. And for the last thing in this box, if you want to count it as an accessory, he does come with, of course, the basic DC figure stand, which I don't ever count as an accessory. And that's basically it. And now, let's move on to the aesthetics. Taking a closer look at O.M.A.C. here, let's start with the aesthetics of the colors. As you can see, the entirety of the figure is basically just purple. However, for the front side, and only for the front side, the purple is applied in such a nice way because there is this clashing of different color tones throughout the entirety of the front side that it just makes the entirety of the figure stand out a lot more. However, for the back side, that is where all of it falls apart. We'll talk about that later. It's a completely different story. So let's focus on the front side of the figure first. So let's start with the chest. As you can see, this looks like dark purple. And unfortunately, my camera isn't the best, so I don't know if it's capturing the colors properly. But in hand, it is dark purple, but there's also this sort of bluish tint that I'm noticing where it looks like dark purple mixing in with the blue. So it doesn't feel exactly like it's all dark purple. That's something I noticed with the chest area here with the way that the paint is applied. And then when you get to the shoulders, you can see how this dark purple bleeds into a lighter purple color which is done in a very fantastic way, because you can see that with the joint right here, right? Like this top part is literally just like dark, and then it's like halfway getting to the lighter side, and then down here you have like a clash of some dark colors with the hands, and it's the same effect going on this side as well with this arm. And then for the center part of the figure, where you have the stomach and the waist, even though this area feels like it just kind of falls flat, there is some areas that are pretty much lighter, and it's mixing in with the dark parts. And I like that it does that, because how often do we see a McFarlane DC Multiverse figure, especially a comic book figure, have this level of paint details applied to it? And it's surprising that they did it to O.M.A.C. But I guess it makes sense, because if you look at the source material artwork here, you can see that the colors are there. Like, there is this different shade of purple going on throughout the entirety of the design here. So this attempt at capturing what this color looks like in the comics, I think it's a really good attempt. I think it's a very good result overall from McFarlane. I think they did a really good job with the way that the colors are clashing, because it very much makes it stand out. And you can see more of that when you get to the legs, because the legs are a really good example. Now, maybe not this side, because it's all dark purple here, but there is some clashing going on this top part. But on this side, you can very much see the dark and the light just mixing in and just, you know, standing out a lot. And I really love how that's done. Now, the next detail outside of just the purple colors, we have the energy effects, as I would like to call these. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be, but you can see that they're on the torso, chest area up here, and then they also have them on the shoulders to the arms, and then of course the legs down here has this sort of effect going on as well. I love how that is applied to the figure. That also allows for the colors to stand out. However, I feel like they cheaped out with these effect application. I was trying to find the word. I just don't remember what the word was. I think they cheaped out with the stomach and the waist area, because they could have easily applied just a little bit of that going on here, because I know this part is flat. You know, there's nothing wrong leaving it this way, because there's already sort of a wash going on here that also allows it to stand out already on its own. But imagine having some of these effects bleed into these parts here as well. It would make the entire front side look a lot cleaner, right? But they decided not to do that, and I just think that's kind of lazy. And that is the downside with these blue effect streaks, because it just basically ends with where the patterns go, and it doesn't bleed into this middle part. Now, if you are a customizer and you know how to paint your figures and add more paint applications to them, you could probably do something similar to this down here with the stomach and the waist, and it would probably make it pop more. Now, before we talk about the head sculpt and the sculpted details here with the chest, with this one part, let's turn our attention to the backside, because this is where it gets very interesting. So the backside is completely different. It does not look the same as the front. And you can say that the backside works in some degrees, but to me it just falls flat, because all that nice paint application going on with the front side kind of just goes south when you look at the back. This upper part right here, where it's like this bright purple, there is a whole different paint work going on here. It's glossy for some reason. I don't know why. It doesn't really make any sense. Why is this glossy? It should be a matte finish like the front, but they did not do that. Well, this part is slightly glossy, but it's not like entirely glossy. But then you look at the back, it's like very shiny, right? And it's not because of the lighting of where I'm recording this. It's literally just very glossy on the back for some reason, this top part. But then when you look at this part right here, there is a different shade of purple, surprisingly, with the sculpting of how this part is painted. But then when you get to his cakes, right, this back part, this is a matte finish light purple. And then when you get to the legs, it goes back to being glossy. So I don't know what's going on with the backside. It's really weird how the colors kind of just fall flat on the back and it's just all chaos on the backside, and there's not entirely like a sort of like, you know, nice roundabout way of like making the colors look like they're clashing compared to the front. So this is something I've noticed with certain figures over the years from like other companies as well, is that sometimes the paint applications they put on the front, they just don't bother to put it on the back. And the best example, which I really want to grab this figure right now because I really want to show a little bit of this. I will have a review for this guy, but this is like the right moment just to bring this in. So for example, this Marvel Legends Wolverine from the MCU, you can see how there's like battle damage dirt effect going on the front side, right? But guess what? When you turn it to the back, it's not there, and it makes no sense. How can it only be on the front but not the back? Why do we cheap out? And that's exactly what I've noticed with some of these action figures over the years, is that, you know, companies love to put in all the paintwork on the front and the back just gets ignored. And that's exactly what I'm noticing here with O.M.A.C. There is that whole fiasco, but overall though, compared to the Wolverine, at least it does kind of work, right? You can see that there is still some bleeding going on in some forms with the colors. Maybe not the right word, but you get what I mean. So, not entirely the end of the world. All right, let's focus on something else now, where it's not the colors. The colors are the best part of this figure, though. It does stand out. But, of course, we do have some new tooling in some areas. Very minor. We have the Brother Eye logo right there that is actually sculpted. They could have easily printed this on just like what they did with the Joker bot version of this logo, where it's just printed on the chest. But the fact that they actually sculpted it on there very much makes it stand out more, and I like that. And then now we can turn our attention to the amazing head sculpt, because I love how all the details here, you would think this is just printed on. No, these are all sculpted. This is done in a very nice way. Like the eyes and all these red and blue colors here, it is sculpted. They did not cheap out. They actually sculpted everything. They could have easily printed everything on there and just called it a day, but they're like, nope, we're gonna freaking put an effort to this head sculpt and just make this front part of his eyes actually have some sculpt work, because of course the rest of the head sculpt is very simplistic. But I do like the fact that the head sculpt has this sort of like Trojan, you know, helmet sort of design going on, like a Greek warrior. It's an interesting sort of design choice. Not something that I would imagine an O.M.A.C would ever have. You would think that these O.M.A.C units would look more like an actual robot, but this version very much looks more humanoid than a robot. But yeah, the head sculpt, yeah, very much like this. I don't even know what else to say. But there it is. That is mainly all the aesthetics with O.M.A.C here. I think the overall execution of this figure was done in a very good way. And when it comes to the paint colors, it is basically a night and day difference between the front and the back. But nevertheless, I respect that all of that on the front is done nicely, because we don't see this often. Now, the last thing that I do want to say about this figure before we get into the articulation when it comes to aesthetics, unfortunately, the figure mold itself is not new. Every single part here is reused from Murder Machine, and of course, we've seen this body buck reused for even Dark Stars, which I don't really think it works for Dark Stars, but for O.M.A.C, I think this reuse works. Starting off with the articulation of the head sculpt, can O.M.A.C look up? No, he cannot. That is the limit of how far his head sculpt can look up. And it's mainly because of the way that the neck is sculpted on the figure and how the neck joint is not tall enough for the head sculpt to actually look up all the way. That's not good. If you're trying to get this guy into like flight poses, you're going to have to probably do some modifications right there. Looking down, he can do decently. Turning his head left and right, he can do. Tilting his head side to side, no problems. So overall, the articulation of the head sculpt when it comes to most areas are pretty good, except for the looking up aspect. Now moving down to the arms. Can he lift out his arms? He can lift them out that much. He can swing them back and forth. He does have upper bicep swivels. He does have double jointed on the arms. He has swivel in the hands as well as wrist articulation. Standard articulation for the arms. For the body, he does have an uppercut. So the upper torso has this very nice range of motion, which is very surprising. It rotates like this. It can lean to the side a little bit like that as well. And he can kind of lean forward. Not exactly the best, but it does work, surprisingly. Leaning back, it does get a little bit gappy, as you can see right there, but it does work as well. For the waist down here, there is rotation, which is nice. There is leaning forward. Not exactly. It doesn't even exist. Leaning back, he can lean back all the way, as you can see. So leaning back is not an issue with this guy. He can do some leaning back workout segments, basically. But if you want this waist area to lean forward, you're gonna have to do some modifications right there as well. Now for the legs, let's start with the thigh swivels, just so I don't forget. Does he have any thigh swivels? No, he does not. They are frozen shut. Can he spread his legs out? Yes, he can. Not a full split all the way, but still a very good spread right there with the legs. Can he kick out? Yes, he can. He can kick out pretty good, actually. That's a really good kick. And it doesn't really run into the diaper part, as we like to call this. So there you go. He can do a full-on kick right there. He does have double jointed in the legs, as you can see. And he also has swivel down here with the feet, articulation, and toe articulation as well. So yeah, this guy is going to be able to do some action poses for sure, even with some of the restrictions that I'm noticing on this figure. But very nicely executed for some of the articulation here that I'm very surprised at. All right, that is basically the articulation for O.M.A.C. It's decent. You could probably pull off some action poses, but do keep in mind there are still restrictions with the articulation for this figure because it is a Mcfarlane DC Multiverse figure, so it's not entirely great for every single pose that you're trying to do when it comes to action poses. So there's that. All right. Before we get into comparisons, let me just show what he looks like with the effect piece on that he comes with, this whole thing. You just pop the hands off like that, and you just basically pop these in to the joint, and there you go. Which side is the top part? Oh, I don't think it matters. There you go. That's what he looks like with the tentacle cords coming out of his, hand right there, which is very terrifying. And yeah, again, it would have been great if there were more weapon accessories given to this guy. But now let's move on to the comparisons before I ramble on too long here with this review. So yeah, let's jump into comparisons. Let's start with another character that is basically created from Brother Eye. We have the Joker bots. I'm going to see if I can fit them in here. Yeah, I think this works, right? Okay, yes, it does fit in here. So as you can see, these two would go together really well. So if you were trying to army build these O.M.A.Cs and have him as the leader, definitely a great option. And you can see that the Brother Eye logo on him is actually printed in the middle of the bat emblem, which, this part is sculpted, but just seeing it sculpted on this is just cooler. There you go. The two of them together. And man, this would have been a cool option if they did like a cannon arm for this. A lot of things they could have done. I'm just thinking about all the ideas. That's the first comparison. And for the second comparison, let's bring in another evil robot entity that you could probably have O.M.A.C with. There is Failsafe. That's another option right there. And there are the two of them together. And then for some non-DC Multiverse stuff, actually, no, let's do one more DC Multiverse. Here is O.M.A.C next to Saturn Girl. And as you can see, O.M.A.C is taller than Saturn Girl. So there's a scale between these two. And now for some non-DC stuff. Here is O.M.A.C next to the Target exclusive shirtless Wolverine that I did pick up, I think, like 2 weeks ago by the time this video goes live on the channel. So there you go. And for another comparison with a Marvel Legend, here he is next to the Marvel Rivals Punisher. They do not scale, but they could work. Actually, yeah, you could probably use these guys as like evil android robots for your Marvel Legends if you want to. I mean, they don't mix in terms of source material, but you can imagine them being whatever, right? So that's something that you could possibly do. And for the last comparison, here is O.M.A.C next to another robot of some kind, which is a Transformer. There's G2 Swoop. And that's pretty much the last comparison. And that's going to be it for all the comparisons for today's review. And if you found today's review of O.M.A.C informative, fun, and wacky, I pretty much kind of did my own thing for this review, right? Informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.